Welcome to The Vital Vagina, where we delve into brave and crucial conversations about the womb and feminine power. This podcast is not just for people with vaginas. We all come from the womb, and there is much for everyone to learn from this place of deep wisdom. I'm your host, Dr. Danielle Cornelius. I'm a chiropractor and holistic pelvic care provider. I've been working in the feminine healing realm for nearly a decade, and I am honored to bring this work and these stories to light. Well, hello, Shara. Welcome back to The Vital Vagina.
Hi, Danielle.
Thank you so much for coming back. I know we're going to dive into a bit of a juicy topic today, but I wanted to start off by just giving you a quick introduction. People who are listening to this episode for the first time can find Shara and I had my very first episode is actually a discussion between the two of us. And today we're going to just talk about something a little bit more specific. But Shara is a dancer, a designer, and an inventor. She and I created a business about almost 10 years ago now together. And then she ended up taking it to this beautiful, beautiful place and has been creating this muse tracking system to help women and people with wombs track their cycles in order to tap into their creativity. So could you, Shara, tell me a little bit more about like you and where you're at and what your background is?
Yeah, absolutely. So maybe I'll tell my story. I think what would be really nice is for everyone to kind of get to know me over time, because I feel like you and I are going to be having many conversations.
Yeah. Just
And
give them some
so
little nuggets.
I'm just going to give your audience and your listeners a little nugget.
Yeah.
And I really want to set the stage of that what I'm about to share, and I think what you and I are about to discuss, is really entering into sacred ground.
Yeah.
Because the topic of infertility and childlessness, the experience of infertility and childlessness, is a silent suffering that we can't voice.
Yeah.
And you remember this, Danielle, when we had the womb sessions, and it was in November, and the topic was about radiant self-expression.
Mm-hmm.
And it was literally 4 days after I had literally become catatonic, because I had lost a opportunity to become a mother. And I feel that the work that we've done together over all these years has truly been the result of the strength that we've had to face the drive to create, and to do it regardless of whether we actually get to become physical mothers or not.
Yeah.
And to become a creator has been one of the greatest honors. And it's funny because people always think that, because I'm single and because I'm childless, that I don't want to become a mother. And what's really interesting is, Womb, which was the name of our organization.
Or that you're not already a mother.
Or that I'm not already a mother, was it was me answering the very call, the feminine version of the hero's journey, which is the woman's quest to create. Because I answered the call of the quest to create in my own life. And luckily I had you along the way in the path. We both experienced these two spectrums of this conversation that we're not having, which is infertility and childlessness. And so yeah, so it's a really, I think this is a really special topic today.
Yeah.
And for those listening in, if they want to know a little bit more about me, what they should know is that I have been to the depths of suffering, and I have come out on the other side full of joie and vivaciousness and excitement, and I am producing my life work.
Yes.
And so, I think that there's, I'm definitely speaking today from a point of, I guess it's like in the hero's journey, you go to the depths, and the hero actually even like faces their final battle and they die, but then they're resurrected and born again. Oh, girl, I've been through all that process. You have to. You have to.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's definitely a topic people don't talk about. And you get to this place from lots of different avenues. Some women are childless by absolute choice, which is beautiful. And some of us have been in a more ambivalent, or just because life circumstances set it up so that it wasn't really a choice. And it really just runs the gamut. And what I've noticed in my personal journey is people really don't talk about it. When I was in my 20s, I was kind of had baby fever, and that's all I cared about. It's like, I'm having a baby. I don't even care if I find a man. I'm just having a baby by myself.
Yeah. Oh, that baby fever definitely went off in my 20s.
Yeah. And then, life happens and time goes by. And like you said, my work has been a real calling too, and it takes you on a journey. And part of that journey for me has been infertility and childlessness, and going through all the depths of feeling around all of that, and also finding like the relief in it in some ways. And just, I don't know, I just really wish that we talked more about this openly, even though it can be really a painful place, because I've noticed even in some of my closest friendships, like once everyone else kind of started having babies and then I wasn't, and I stopped talking about it, everyone else just stopped talking about it too.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's really and talk about, like, I sent you this quote from a scientific paper I was reading over the weekend. Like I was saying, like everything I was doing this weekend was leading up to this conversation.
Mm-hmm.
And I just was like, wow, when I saw that in this paper, they said for a woman, the stress of infertility, or I put in, parentheses, or childlessness,
Mm-hmm.
has been compared to having a diagnosis of cancer or HIV. And for us to not be talking about it, for us to silently suffer and, hey, show up to work the next day and soldier on as if we didn't just experience the profound energy of life in our body and then lose it, or the profound yes that our body turns on when we find the appropriate partner. Like for me, like having that baby fever has always been a bottom up process, not a top down, meaning it's not been my mind saying, I'm going to have a baby and I know that I can become a mother no matter what. Like I can, it's modern technology, modern medicine. I can do it. For me, it's always been my body sees and recognizes something in an instant with this man, and we are meant to create.
Like the potential of creation and what it'll be.
It's almost like, so like Tammy Kent in The Wild Feminine, to me, I feel so connected to this wild feminine of me that is, like, imagine, Shara as an animal, and it's springtime, and then all of a sudden it's time to mate. My body is going to know how to pick the right suitor. And so that when I talk from a bottom up level, I mean the animal in me turns on.
Yeah.
And it's only happened 3 times, and it doesn't happen with every partner. But it's really interesting because my body wants to procreate, and it really depends on the partner. It wants to have his baby or it doesn't. And the love is still the same, but it's only happened for me with 3 partners that I've met. But because of life, or you're too young, or circumstances, you're not able to, unite your lives. And like my body doesn't know that there's all these social structures. My body doesn't know that I'm going off to college. My body doesn't know, that it's like I'm going to start, trying to start a inventive venture. And so I think that's a part of the silent suffering for me has been really, really finding peace between the primal in me that is very real.
Yeah.
And the aspirational and ambitious in me that is also very real.
I think it's really interesting that you said for you it's been bottom up, because for me it was top down. I think I've always really loved like babies. Like when I was a teenager or a young kid, like I liked babysitting babies and like
Oh.
little kids. And I've always really just loved, like I still do. I'm so grateful I get to work on postpartum women because most of the time they bring in their babies and I just get to play with
Oh.
babies and it totally satisfies that urge for me. But it was like, I think it got stuck in my head. Like I can do whatever I want. And if I want to have a baby, I can have it. It doesn't depend on the man. But when I was in certain relationships, that instinct would kind of go away. And then that was really confusing for me
I
at
know.
the
It's
time.
interesting. Interesting.
Yeah. It took some deep work and some healing and going through holistic pelvic care and like psychic type healing work for me to really learn that my body was actually telling me through being basically infertile. Not that I'm sure that I could use like medical interventions and I could get pregnant and have a baby if I wanted to, but it didn't come naturally. I've always had irregular periods. It's up through my family line too, my mother line too. So it took me a while once I went through those layers, I really connected to the deep, deep, deep part of my body saying, actually, it's not your path in this life because you have other things to do that are really, really important to single focus on. And but it took me a long time to like really understand that on a deep level. And you have to still go through like, because those hormonal urges are also so strong that it can be confusing.
So strong.
You know?
Well, really confused. I mean, talk about confusion. My last partnership, my body was in a yes, but because I was embedded with fear in the culture of advanced maternal age, when I clearly was healthy and having healthy cycles.
Yeah, it's so
something
annoying.
in like a nuclear reactor in my mind said, this is the last chance. This is it. This is it for you. And so I was like, okay, well, I better make this work. And it was so confusing because it's the only time I went from a top down. And it really actually created more distress and problems in my life than if I just was trusting my body and its natural drive to create. And I think that maybe if we had more in our culture, if we had a greater and a more expansive concept of a woman's creative purpose, like don't ever deny, like how you said, like a single focus, like the single focus in a single woman. Do not ever deny a single woman her motherhood instinct, because there are plenty of fathers of science.
Yeah, whether they have children or not.
Whether they have children or not.
And nobody's like pitying them or feeling sorry for them or avoiding
no
them.
One's denying no one is denying their drive to create.
Yeah. Yep.
And their drive to leave a legacy.
Yep. And this is where I always get back to, when you think about creation, when it comes to creating life through the body perspective, males contribute like the sperm, which is this one moment in time, and the female contributes 9 months and then a lot more after that. And so I think like what we're missing of the feminine creative drive when we discount like female creativity outside of pregnancy and birthing.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. Absolutely.
So I keep getting this flash of this memory of when you and I first met. And we're two powerful females. And we were talking about...
That's why I love you.
But we got to be careful what we say too.
We have to be very careful what we say. But I do want to tell you that animal in me sniffed out your alpha right away. And I was like, oh yeah, she's my homegirl.
Yeah. Like I liked you right away too. Yeah, it was instant. And I remember we were at lunch across the street from my old studio one day. And it was probably a couple months after we met. And after we had done one of those workshops with Maria and we started really digging into the feminine realm. I think we were either starting womb at that time or we had just started it. But we were talking about how neither one of us had kids and we were kind of telling each other stories. And then we looked at each other and you were like, let's pinky swear to not have children. And then we did.
Here we are.
And I remember in the moment like, oh, I better be real careful about like what I just, because that felt really powerful. Like we just like made some sort of a spell. But now that I look, and then, you know, I know you went through some times after that, and so did I, of like that's when things got deeper. I had to really confront after that. And I never associated it with that moment. It was later that I kind of pieced this all back together. But after that, I had a few years of like having to go into the depths and really make some hard choices for myself. And you kind of have to make them for your, you know, for yourself. I couldn't rely on my partner to help me because it was really a deep inside job to do.
Really, it really is.
And so I feel like between the time that we made that pinky swear and now, like 8 years, I think, have gone by, and what we've created is utterly worth not going through birthing and children. And not to say that you couldn't do both, but the ability I've had to be able to single focus is such a blessing that I guess what I wanted was to be able to either throw myself 100% into mothering or throw myself 100% into business. And then so I separated myself into like, well, I'm just going to let go of mothering. And then of course, like I end up being attracted to this feminine realm, and there's so much mothering involved in my job. And so, you know, there's so much, creation involved in like doing this deeply feminine work that there is something really special. And how many women in history that we know of, in recorded history, have actually had the opportunity to be able to create without having children also.
Exactly. And let me just, for our listeners, when we pinky swore, my intention at that pinky swear was simply for a period of time, we would not get knocked up.
Yeah.
So that we could focus on this thing that I sensed that there was something for you and I to create together.
Yeah.
And it was so
strong.
I didn't know what it was at the time. And now it is all of this. It is your practice. It is the muse cycle. It is this inventive, work. But I knew it's like, it was like the artist call. It's like when when the call to create, sometimes you have to commit to the journey, or you don't get the boon.
Right.
And so that was why I was like, oh man, I was like, girl, we got to be in this, because if we stick with this, this is going to be so, so good. And we're going to have something that we can actually, that will sustain us for the rest of our lives. Because I'm into that, I'm into that vocational longevity. I'm into that lifelong learning. I'm into that lifelong inspiration. Like I'm going to be in my 90s still doing this work.
Yes, I know. Me
because
too.
you and I really committed up front, and we seeded something great. And so now it's like, I have all this, now that the work's done, I was like, hey,
I know.
my body is still highly fertile and still like I have more options for myself. So if a suitor wants to present himself and my body says a complete yes, I absolutely would be open to that.
That's the thing. It's like, that's the getting into your body to the point where you heal that wound, where a lot of it is actually coming from society anyway. And then you realize how much of a choice it is, and it's okay either way. Like you can really come to some healing. Tammy actually really helped me learn this over the years, because parenting is fucking hard. I watch
really
what people
hard.
go through, and it's so intense. And I think we could do a lot better job taking care of mothers in general. And I think part of that is, and one of my guests a few episodes ago was talking about how parenting is also a deep calling. Like there's the creation aspect of it, but then there's also the parenting aspect of it. That's what I always end up avoiding when I start thinking about like teenagers and the stress of the adolescence and all that stuff. Then I'd be like, oh, I could wait a little longer. And that's, that's where the ambivalence kind of came in for me as reality set in. And I was grateful as I've gotten older for my infertility, because it forced me to actually make a very conscious choice, which I'm really grateful for, because I would have just had a bunch of babies because I like babies. I would have been like, then I would have personally been one of the women that was like, I cannot do all of it. I can't do the work and all of the things. I think a lot of women absolutely can and are phenomenal, and I'm just not one of them. I really like single focusing. And that's where I've done some of my best work. So I've been always wanting the freedom. But the other thing that came to my mind when you were talking was, I was in a women's circle once with some older women in their 60s and 70s, I would say.
Oh, yeah.
And one of them had a sister who was in the hospital, and I heard them like talking on a break. We were all in the same room, so they weren't like in private, but they were having a conversation that was just everyone could hear. And one of them, she was worried about her sister and whether she was going to make it or not. And she said, because she's never had children, so she doesn't have anything to live for. And I, and that one hit me.
Well, then what have I been doing for, 4 decades?
I think that's what snapped me out of any grief I was having. Cause I was like, well, bullshit. I have a lot to live for actually. And it's not just that. Like it's,
I'm living for my creative purpose, the very thing I feel like I was born to do. Are you kidding me?
Yeah, or for myself. Yeah. Like it really just helped me realize like how much we put on, how much women and, and females can put on each other. And how we haven't really created space to talk about this, but we also put just all this really weird stuff on it anyway. And I think we need to really reconsider how we think about mothering. And
yeah, I mean, for me, like, I remember in my early 20s when I first got, let's see, what shall we call it? Procreation lust. So when I got hit with the first strike of procreation lust, I came across this book, Our Stolen Future. Like one of my favorite things is to go into the library. Like I still have a library card. I have like 80 books checked out at the library right now.
Yeah, your house looks like a library.
Because I have all the library books from the library in my house. All you have to do is renew them over and over, and you basically have a rented library.
Yeah, that's awesome.
So it's like it feels very magical to like just go into the aisles of the library without any mission and just find that this book calls to you on the shelves. Yeah. And this one book in my 20s is called Our Stolen Future. And I was really getting into health at this point. And so basically the premise of the book is our environment is affecting our internal environment, our external environment and our ecology, and what we're doing with chemicals is affecting the internal environment and the future generation of our species. And because the first environment is the mother, is the womb.
Right.
And at that moment, it hit me the responsibility of becoming a mother. And it's insane to me because I only have found 2 men that have validated this mama bear like intensity that I always felt around motherhood, because our culture doesn't really support like a preparing the body in preconception. And like with it really took the only 2 men I have heard that didn't scoff at my intensity or say that I'm like too intense or crazy, or hey, I've heard, oh yeah, people just have babies all the time. Like, yes, I know, but really it was someone who didn't go to college, but he actually went to a farm instead. So he really got in touch with natural seasons and cycles.
Yeah.
And the other is a scientist doing work on like childhood development. And so I'm like, these are the only 2 men I have come in my personal experience that validate this sense that becoming a mother is an extremely, extremely responsible thing. And the culture leaves us to do it on our own, because I always thought about the future of business. And it's like, truly, if you produce goods and services that are good for the mother, they are good for all humans, and they are good for the earth.
Yes.
Because if you produce things that, are reducing the environmental and the endocrine disrupting, processes, then it's like everyone gets to raise up, and you actually get to not only do I have optimal health, but there's a chance for the future generation to also be set up for optimal health.
Absolutely. I think part of sustainability is also holding back on constantly propelling forward, and part of that is a little bit of population control, I guess.
Well, to me, this is why I love I really love neuroscience so much.
Yeah, me too. It's so good.
People ask, like, Shara, why have you? It's like I was joking in one of my talks. It's like scholarship has made me like a celibate Samantha from Sex and the City, because I am full of energy. Oh, yeah. Trust me. Yeah. But that single vision, single focus has really kept me on the path, because I have no resources. I did this all with no resources, and it takes a really serious dedication to, it's like I developed a model of like what's going on between the ovaries and the brain, and how creativity works for women,
Yeah.
and how cognition works as we're going through these different, hormonal states. And, it was like it was a calling, and it's something that I really, it's where my mother instincts led me, because
Yes.
there's too many women who are suffering from being female or being cyclical.
Yeah.
And it's like it reminds me, it's the same to me, the parallels between little Dushara, so Shara, when I was a little girl,
Mm.
of not being white, and of the parallels of not being male that I see in women,
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
they're a lot of the same things. It's like, because I'm not white, I'm less than. Because I'm not white, boys don't like me. Because I'm not white, I'm not pretty. Because I'm not white, I'm all of these things as a little child, going in my head, running in my head over and over. And that really healed for me, as I became an adult, like at 21, it really, really healed for me. And so it's really interesting to see the parallels going on. And because I'm not male, I'm powerless. Because I'm not male, and seeing this very similar protection from rejection, or protection from not being accepted, that comes up. And you take, when you're part of the, when you're marginalized, you self-destruct on yourself. You eat that social, like that part of you that says, because you're a woman, because you're hormonal, and because you're a woman and you're hormonal, you're crazy.
Yeah.
You internalize that. And so, the part of my mothering instinct that came off is the one thing that really, for me, that really was a part of my healing journey of, because I'm not white, I'm, ugly. Because I'm not white, I'm less than, was actually becoming a woman. When I became a woman, I was like, I was all of a sudden initiated into this world that I heard like Queen Latifah talk about, of being like strong and powerful, and like, so it really was a beautiful, beautiful flourishing into a radical confidence. And so I've only ever experienced anything positive with becoming a woman. And I'm talking the very beginning of becoming a woman. I'm talking running home from grade school. And as my ovaries were starting to produce for the first time, I don't even know if anyone knew what was going on with me back then, but it's like, I felt like there was a secret going on, because I was becoming a woman right before even before my first menses, which is, as we know from looking at teenage prepubescent patterns, you actually start to produce cervical mucus before your first bleed. And so I was like, this secret was happening, and I was becoming a woman, and I was like, it was such a powerful initiation for me. And I never ever since then, I never because I had already navigated through, because I'm not white, I'm less than, because I navigated through that, I never ever let anyone tell me, because I'm not a man, I'm blank as a woman. Never, ever. We internalize the very things that we're trying to get, because we all want to be fully self-expressed. We all want to be, everyone loves power. Everyone wants to fully express their gifts.
Yeah.
Everyone wants access to resources. And if some of those resources, or some of those freedoms, or some of those, those abilities to flourish in life are only primarily given to certain groups, and then they're denied to others, then we might internalize the very things. Like, we might actually, to get into the workplaces, put create outfits that give us broad shoulders as we enter the workplace, because we're able to really do it for the first time. And so I think now, as I'm, seeing articles come out in the New York Times about women's expression of power, I think that there's a trend where women are like, hey, wait a minute. Okay, we did get into the workplace, yet something's still missing. And maybe what's missing is we haven't accepted that, even though we were in a structure, that structure actually didn't truly honor who we are.
Yeah.
And so that structure needs to change so that we can truly express
Yeah.
our fullness, our wholeness, and
Yeah.
then co-create from there. Like, I'm co-creating, like, the beautiful culmination of all this is, my body said yes, and those partnerships didn't culminate into,
Mhm.
marriage and family and children. But now it's like, because I was able to tune into this primal drive to create, it's like I have, like, all kinds of collaborative partners,
And lots
and,
of babies.
the collaborative part and lots of
Yeah.
babies, and, the collaborative partnership I'm doing with some really brilliant men,
Yeah.
and the perspective that we're sharing, and the understanding that we're coming to, of really, really collaborating together, like, that's the future I see, is like, it's not, it's like, Leonard Shlain, one of my favorite neurosurgeons and authors,
I
is
love
like,
him.
the time of the alphabet versus the goddess. It's like, before the written word, was the visual image.
Yeah.
And then the God was female. And then the visual image came, and then God became male. Well, I was like, then his final book before he passed was Leonardo's Brain. And it's now about synthesis and coming together. And like, that's the future I see, where it's like, let these standards of power kind of crumble on themselves,
Yep.
so that we can get back to, human flourishing. Let everyone be self-expressed. Don't deny someone their self-expression. Don't deny someone their ability to feel vital and powerful. Don't exercise your power over another to get advantage.
Yeah.
It's like,
And
it's
yeah, living in harmony, living a sustainable.
let's get over these bullshit competitive models of
Yeah.
nature. Nature is emergent and chaotic, but, like, there's an order and a synchrony to it. It's like, let's just get into the, like, come on, people, top of the Maslow's here.
Yeah, totally. I can't believe Leonard Shlain had another book that I didn't know about. I hadn't heard of that one.
Oh, Leonardo's Brain Girl. It was literally, he finished the manuscript the week that he passed
Ugh.
from his brain tumor.
I was reading
It
Alphabet versus the Goddess, and then he passed while I was reading that book.
Yeah.
It's
Oof.
such a good book for people who are interested in, like, masculine, feminine energies and how that comes through our cultures. Alphabet versus the Goddess and Sex, Time, and Power, and then obviously Leonardo's Brain, which I have to read, and I haven't
Yeah.
yet. All they're at least the two I read. The other two are great, and I trust you that the third one is too.
So fantastic.
Yeah.
Yeah, Leonard Shlain, like, they're and to have ally, like, my father was an ally. Like, my father, actually, I went to him and I was like, "Dad, am I ugly?"
Oh.
Because I was like, no one ever wanted to take me out to dances or anything.
Yeah.
And my dad was such an ally for me, like,
Yeah.
Leonard Shlain, like, talking about, like, the feminine, and why we need to embrace it, and why, we need to have a holistic brain, and not just one, more wired towards, one way of thinking or the other.
Yeah.
There's allies, there's men in science that are our allies. Like, there's so many allies that, so we don't have to, um, fight the powers that be and to spend and waste our energy. It's like,
Mhm.
let's get to the female drive to create. Let's understand women are creators. Let's create systems that acknowledge female rhythms, female cycles in the female body. Let's get healthcare. Let's that
Yeah.
really honors the female body and respects woman's flourishing.
And the feminine in general. I mean, I think that's why we're seeing more and more males come in to support us and, like, really be balanced, because people have been talking about this quote unquote feminine rising for the last 10 years or so. And
Yeah,
what they don't understand is it's not a female or woman thing. It's coming through for everyone, because
yeah,
we've all been fractured by the idea that gender is concretized into our bodies. I do think
yeah,
we definitely, like, females embody feminine energy, males embody male energy, generally speaking, and that gives us a lot of information about what those energies are, but the energies themselves are just energy. And they go together. It's like, that's holistic thinking. And so the males that are coming to us have been doing work in the feminine for themselves, and they're not stuck in that idea that anything feminine is female and female is less than, so I can't be anything to do with feminine.
Yeah.
And so,
Well, really, it's like we need each other. You just
yeah.
reminded me of actually why all this inspired inside of me. It was because of a male. All of this inspired inside, well, there was also, when we pinky swore,
Yeah.
that definitely was some really profound stuff that inspired inside of me. But when, when the next like iteration of this work was really turning into the Muse cycle, that was my body responding in a state of, it's called biobehavioral synchrony. It's kind of a fun, crazy science word. But basically what it means is it's like that when you meet, it's like when you meet someone and it's like maybe love at first sight, or it's connection at first sight, or it's chemistry at first sight, all those things that make you attracted to someone immediately,
Yeah.
and it's reciprocal. Well, it looks like from the research that I've done is the time in the high point in mid-cycle when we're most fertile, the back of the brain, like all the sensory centers come online. And it looks like in human bonding, when you meet someone and there's a sense of knowing and attraction, your brains sync in those same areas. So what I believe was
I
happening,
love that.
isn't it cool?
Yes.
So that literally, I like to say it's like I'm playing with this concept of like, hi, my name is Shara. I'm a highly creative individual and I crush a lot.
I love that.
So I'm literally being activated by this crush in the very part of the brain that inspires creative thinking and is associated with like ahas and eurekas. And it's because of it's because of the crush that I was able to feel and access deeper parts um, of my own felt sense of inner self. And it's because of the crush, because of my opposite mirroring back to me
Mm.
through the laws of attraction, literally like the true laws of attraction,
Yeah.
not like whatever, ask the universe and the universe gives you whatever you want. Sorry, magical thinking, everyone. That's not how the universe
I
works.
agree.
Sorry to break it to you. I've
It's a
asked
little
for many
it's a
things that
little
I've
more
wanted, and
complicated
the
than that.
universe was like, I don't revolve around you.
Yeah.
Sorry. So,
I know the law of attraction really does work better for people who are the most privileged somehow.
so anyway,
Anyway.
so
Sorry.
true love,
Sorry,
ding.
not sorry.
Sorry, not sorry, just calling it out. Woke. So true law of attraction, is going off. And because of that, I'm able to feel these states. And I swear it's of because of my opposite, because of my body's longing to unite with that which is opposite from me, because I honor men and when good men doing good things, because of that, like they were a part, like men in my life were a part of inspiring my best work.
Yeah.
And so really I'm like, come on people, like let's get to the positive aspects of flourishing, not only within ourselves and being peak performers, but together.
This is so brilliant because it's bringing back that, like, when you do have a crush, but all you do is put all your energy into that person and then you just want to merge with them or whatever. But you're bringing
Yeah.
the idea that, like, if you can contain that energy and put it into something, it is so powerful.
Oh yeah, girl.
And then on top of it, you're making me think of like how many women, especially white women, have like created a battle in feminism against males. Not to say that the males aren't the one that created a lot of this, because it is. But however, we are the fucking mothers. And so we have a responsibility to actually stand in our rightful power and actually hold space for them to actually shift so that we can create more peace. That's how I feel anyway.
Well, maybe it's don't they rise up to
Yeah.
how they're challenged.
And
It's
what
like,
we're
well, just
expecting.
and what we're expecting. So just expect greatness. It's like I'm like, let's meet in our greatness and
Absolutely.
not in our dysfunction.
Yes. Oh, that was juicy. I think it's kind of, well, is there anything else that you want to bring up on this topic of childlessness and infertility? And I actually feel like we might need to come back because I think people might have questions and more comments and we can go deeper, but anything that's coming up for you right now about it?
Yeah. We entered this as as a really sensitive and sacred space, and I think we should close it as such,
Yeah.
because it's such a it's a topic that just can rent the soul. It just touches the soul. It's such a deep
Yeah.
place. And for any woman who might be listening in because she has felt it herself, or she has had to struggle through infertility or, childlessness, in which for my experience is being fertile, but not having the opportunity to have a child.
Or even being infertile and not having a child too.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
Because in my situation, I never had any signs that I was fertile. I've never been pregnant. And I wanted it for a while, but I never wanted to, I only wanted it if it came to me naturally. I was pretty clear about that for some reason. I didn't want to have to go force for it. And of course I could like adopt, or I could do IVF, but those options are also very expensive.
Yeah.
And so sometimes it's really literally not a choice.
Hey, good
Yeah.
point. Very good
Yeah.
point. You're right. You're right. Sometimes it's not a choice. And so then what do you do?
Yeah.
And so for any woman who's listening, I know it's really hard for anyone to understand the like the dark night of the soul that, you're going through. And
Yet that
and
is the transition point for a rebirth also. Yeah.
exactly. It is the metaphor for you, for any woman listening in, is the phoenix rises out of the
Yeah.
ashes. And if you can take that desire and that drive, that biological drive inside of you to create, that's in me, that's in Danielle, that's in us. And if you can channel that into something that can get you out of bed and get your joie back, then really it can be a true saving grace. And I'm speaking from real experience. That's how I pulled
Yeah.
myself up out of my own ashes.
Me too. Me too. I had to find the thing, pull myself out, and then I discovered that I can become unstoppable. Like
Yeah.
once you can heal that depth of pain, because it's then
Exactly.
you can deal with literally anything.
Exactly. I'm like, "Yep. Yep, tragedy, like biblical Book of Job
Yeah, and
style," but I'm
some of
cool.
us, that's our hero or heroine's journey, is to go through that. That's our shamanic journey, and that's what teaches us how
Mhm.
to hold space on a deeper level than most people can in our culture, and that can be
Mhm.
a really beautiful thing.
A really beautiful thing.
Um,
A really beautiful
so
thing.
let's talk about one of your babies, the one that's going to help other women track their cycles, not just for pregnancy and fertility, for babies, for like human babies.
Yeah.
Tell us more about
Yeah, yeah,
what you've
yeah.
been working on.
Yeah, so, discoveryourmuse.com is where women can go to learn more about this connection between their cycle and their muse. And if any woman's interested in um, that primal drive to create in terms of like opening up into her purpose, opening up into her body of work, fueling her performance, well, then there are actually 9 different states that she can discover. And we do that through the Muse cycle. And so anyone going to discoveryourmuse.com um, can be invited to, take this call to adventure very much in the feminine form of the hero's journey, which is the female quest to create.
I love it. Thank you so much for this conversation. I know this one was a a topic that's a little, it is sacred, and it can be painful. So I thank you for being open and brave enough to have this conversation with me publicly for people to heal, to help them heal. Thank you for listening, and I hope you enjoyed today's episode. You can find show notes at vitalvagina.com. If you like what you hear, please subscribe and share with your friends. We'll be back next week with another episode.